In the early 2000s, Dr. Robert Scranton fell into SCP-3001 after an accident at Site 20, where he and his wife had been studying it. He didn't die right away. Instead, he awoke in a pitch-black void, endless, weightless, without any point of reference, without direction. In those first days, Robert had no idea that the control console he carried with him was still functioning. All he could see was a faint red light, blinking in the darkness. He assumed it meant nothing. He screamed, ran aimlessly, desperate for a way out. But every cry for help was instantly swallowed, leaving behind a suffocating silence. For 8 days straight, he struggled in despair, at times panicking, at times furious, then collapsing into confusion. He tried moving in one direction, but never arrived anywhere. He tried lying still, but the isolation nearly drove him insane. The only reminders that he was still alive were hunger, thirst, and the dull aches of a body slowly being worn away. It wasn't until the 11th day that Robert's hands brushed against the console. At first, he pounded on it in frustration, venting his rage on cold, unfeeling metal. Hours later, he realized something. The recording system was still active. From that moment on, the recorder, the one companion that stayed with him for more than 5 years inside SCP-3001, which he came to call Red, became his fragile lifeline to the outside world. It never replied, never comforted him. It simply recorded. Yet in its silence, Robert found a place to pour out his fear, his pain, and the memories that time was slowly eroding. His first words to Red were incoherent. He repeated his name, his age, his birthday, his favorite color, his wife's name, as if clinging to memory itself. Name: Robert Scranton. Age: 39. Birthday: September 19th, 1961. Favorite color: blue. Wife: Anna. I love her very much. He recited every small detail, from favorite songs to the day of their wedding, like a ritual, to keep them from vanishing from his mind. He told Red about the photo of Anna he kept in his pocket, begging for a flicker of light just to see her face again. Hello, Anna. I'm still here. I'm alive. I'll come back. Please don't be sad. But memories weren't the only things dissolving. Parts of his body began to fade into SCP-3001. Even his internal organs. He tried to kill himself 184 times, but nothing worked. As his body all but disappeared, Robert whispered, "Let me keep my heart. That's all I want." Time passed. He cried, not from pain, but from realizing he had lost his wedding ring. Then he murmured, as if trying to soothe himself, "It's okay, my love. It's okay. I'll find another way. There's still enough of me left. 5 more years. 5 more years to think of something." And still, SCP-3001 slowly consumed him. His final recordings before fading away were part farewell, part desperate plea to the only companions he had left. "Not yet, Red. Please. I know you want to leave, but I'm not ready. Not yet. Not yet. I love you, Red. I love you, Anna." On October 23, 2005, a test at Site 120 unexpectedly opened a breach into SCP-3001. In the lab, researchers watched in shock as a pulsing, crimson mass of decayed matter spilled out, stinking of death. When she drew closer, Dr. Anna Lang realized it was all that remained of her husband, Robert Scranton, after nearly 6 years trapped in the Red reality. The system activated, playing his final recordings, Robert repeating his name, his birthday, and messages for his wife. As Anna wept, a wedding ring slipped free from the red mass and fell onto the floor. After 5 years, 11 months, 21 days, Robert Scranton was finally released. Alan, a gentle elementary school teacher, had a happy family with his wife Margaret and their 2 young children, Jess and Liz. They once thought life ahead would be complete until Alan discovered a tumor in his brain. The illness grew worse, stealing away his strength, and with it, the future his family had hoped for. What Alan feared most was not death itself, but leaving behind a wife without her husband and children who would grow up without a father. He began to write letters to his children, stories left untold, lessons he wished he could stay to teach them when they were older. But he knew ink and paper would never be enough. Photographs would be nothing more than cold images. He wanted more. He wanted to leave behind a father who could truly be there, a presence that would remain with them. In desperation, he turned to something strange. He gathered every bit of savings he had, and even stole an unclaimed body from the crematorium where he once worked. With it, he tried to construct a replacement father, a figure that could exist so his children would believe their dad was still here, still listening, still protecting them. In his final days, Alan brought that figure home, but not as himself. He introduced it as a paramedic, claiming he had brought Alan back after an accident. At once, the entity's disturbing effect took hold. Margaret looked at it and was certain this was her husband who had just survived. Liz and Jess burst into tears, screaming for their dad who was badly injured, while their real father stood there, erased from their memories. The chaos crushed Alan. His children cried until their voices broke. His wife clung desperately to a false shadow, and that thing stood silently, a twisted imitation of him. Alan wept, turned his back, and walked away, never to return. He died only 2 months later, but what he left behind remained. It was no father. It was SCP-1976, a creature that makes anyone who sees it believe it is their father, recently returned from a tragic accident, while erasing all memory of the real one. And carved into its back are the words, "To my son who will never know me." 20 years old, the most beautiful age of one's life. The age of dreams, of love, of beginning the journey to prove oneself. But not everyone is fortunate enough to live through their 20s in full, and SCP-5732 was one of those who could not. It was just a typical weekend family gathering. After the meal, everyone headed down to the pool. Everything seemed normal, until they came back up, and her mother realized her daughter was missing. Panic set in as the family searched, only to find her sinking at the bottom of the pool. They pulled her out, desperately tried CPR, but nothing worked. An ambulance rushed her to the ER. After 4 long hours of surgery, the doctor emerged with a heavy face. He shook his head, announcing that the young woman hadn't survived. The family broke down in tears. Her mother collapsed in the hospital hallway. They believed she was gone forever and began to prepare her funeral, drowning in grief. But the truth didn't end there. The girl inside the coffin and the one in the photograph were not the same. While her family was holding the funeral, she had been taken into Foundation containment, analyzed, and placed under 24/7 surveillance. Samples of the pool water were tested, and the Foundation confirmed her anomaly. The ability to purify any source of water, turning it into distilled water. But this gift came with a devastating price. Every time she came into contact with water, her immune system weakened further, and her internal organs suffered severe damage. A single sip of water made her nauseous. Bathing left her dizzy and faint. From then on, she was confined to a sealed room, trapped in unbearable loneliness. She was powerless, forced to watch her family mourn and bury her while she was still alive, without ever having a chance to say goodbye. She once pleaded with Dr. Miller, the researcher assigned to her case. "Can't you give me just one chance to say goodbye?" But the only answer she received was a shake of the head and the words, "Goodbyes are a luxury. Most people never get the chance." After that day, she never asked again. Instead, she began speaking more with Dr. Miller, the only person willing to listen. He brought her painkillers, an electric blanket, a few books, an old game console, even a VR headset so she could see the world outside. Yet no matter how hard he tried, they were only makeshift fragments of a life she had lost. On an April morning in 2016, before she could finish that unfinished story, before she and Dr. Miller could keep their plan of playing VR together, watching a wildlife documentary and eating French toast sticks the next morning, she passed away quietly in her sleep. After her cremation, her ashes were entrusted to Dr. Miller, along with the 2 old DVDs she had watched over and over in her final days. February 17th, 2016. In the blink of an eye, an unthinkable incident occurred in the hallway of Site 22. While carrying a stack of specimen files for several anomalies, Dr. Elizabeth Graham suddenly vanished from the security cameras, leaving no trace behind. Only a few scattered papers remained on the floor. She awoke in another place, an endless expanse of sand with no sense of direction, known as SCP-3890. The sky was alien, yet its sun rose and set like Earth's. The climate was warm by day and cold at night, but never to the point of discomfort. Strange structures dotted the desert, a Roman-style building, a modern bank, a nameless temple, like fragments of different civilizations fallen into this place. And there were people, or rather husks, SCP-3890-1, wandering silently around these structures with no other behavior. At first, Elizabeth thought she had merely ended up somewhere remote, but 3 days passed, and she realized she felt no hunger, no thirst. Quietly observing the entities, she picked up a knife from one of the SCP-3890-1 for protection. When she dissected one and found a normal human body inside, she understood. They had once been people, sent here for some purpose. Then SCP-3890-2 appeared, an invisible predator in this desert of memories. It could be anything: a grain of sand, a scrap of paper, a star in the sky. When Elizabeth approached it, it unfolded like a pitch-black piece of origami, and instead of drawing blood, it siphoned away her memories bit by bit. With each encounter, she forgot more: her childhood, her work, her colleagues, even why she had joined the Foundation. Eventually, only her name remained. "My name is Elizabeth Graham. My name is Elizabeth Graham." She wrote it over and over on scraps of paper, a ritual to hold on to her identity. She found a modern bank building to serve as a refuge. Inside were the bodies of a family who had committed suicide together. She too had thought of it, but still forced herself to live, to write, to remember. Every day, before the sun sets, she takes her knife and inspects the bodies to make sure none of them are SCP-3890-2. She didn't need food or water, but she still had to sleep. Each time she slept was a gamble. SCP-3890-2 could slip in at any moment. In her journal, she wrote, "I know I won't get out of here. I've heard all the horror stories of people trapped in endless dimensions. I just never thought I'd become one of them. This place is designed for it to hunt. All I have left is this knife and my memories. Don't let me forget my name." The crying outside the bank each night, perhaps SCP-3890-2, perhaps another victim, went on and on. No one knows how long Elizabeth Graham survived, or if she has already become one of the SCP-3890-1, wandering the nameless desert. But the pages she left behind remain as the last evidence that there was once a person, a Foundation researcher, trapped here, fighting to the very end. Jessica Lambert, 19 years old, a girl from Illinois. One day she contacted the FBI, claiming she had psychic powers. To the FBI, it was nothing but a boring prank. They hunted criminals, not superhumans. But the Foundation was different. They investigated, confirmed her ability was real, and took Jessica away. Her family and friends had their memories erased, left to believe Jessica had died in a car accident. From then on, Jessica lived behind the 4 walls of a containment cell at Site-43. The Foundation concluded her anomaly was simple. Anyone who touched Jessica would feel her emotions for about 20 to 30 minutes before returning to normal. No pain, no harm. But from that moment, she carried a new name: SCP-3127. At first, Jessica behaved normally. She cooperated, obeyed, and held on to hope that one day she might return to her family. But that hope was an illusion. On December 10th, 2016, Jessica was suddenly racked with severe pain. She had shown no signs of pregnancy, and yet, just hours later, she gave birth to a live piglet. Doctors tried to save her, but failed. Jessica died on the operating table. The designation 3127 was passed on to the creature. The piglet was no ordinary animal. It spoke in Jessica's voice, calling itself Duchess Isabella III, an English noblewoman from 1827 who never existed. Anyone who touched it transformed into a piglet as well, speaking in Jessica's own voice. Then it died. A tumor in its brain ruptured and grew into a new Jessica. The Foundation named this cycle a Mockus event. From then on, the tragedy repeated. Each Mockus event meant Jessica's death and rebirth into ever more grotesque forms. a girl whose internal organs were all piglets, a massive pig containing hundreds of tiny Jessicas screaming endlessly, or a half-human, half-pig hybrid, still conscious but howling in despair. In one rebirth, Jessica left behind a desperate note. Please actually do what I'm asking instead of saying you'll consider it. This is your fault. Now I'm some pig monster and you just sit there taking notes. I don't even know who I am anymore. Please help me. But the Foundation was powerless. Each time SCP-3127 felt ill, personnel could only brace themselves for the next Mockus event. On February 21, 2017, SCP-3127 was no longer a single entity. The entirety of Research Installation 33, where it had been transferred, transformed into one massive, motionless pig. Its screams came in broken intervals, and when translated into Morse code, the messages read, "Were, am I, make it stop, oink." And so the cycle continues to this day, the endless tragedy of Jessica Lambert. In early 2005, the Foundation discovered SCP-1357 after receiving reports of an amusement park in Poland that continuously changed its shape. All residents of the nearby town were interrogated and administered Class B amnestics. However, entering the park was no simple matter. The group had to include at least one couple, one child under 18, and each person had to hold an SCP-1357-B ticket, printed in the holder's native language. Because of these requirements, on August 4, 2005, Agent Fredericks, accompanied by his wife and young daughter Haley, was sent into SCP-1357 to interrogate the entities inside. At first glance, the place appeared to be nothing more than a normal amusement park, filled with cheerful cartoon characters welcoming children. But when Fredericks began questioning one of the SCP-1357-A instances, which had taken the form of Steve from Blue's Clues, about the park's origins, tragedy struck. SCP-1357-A dodged the question, urging him to forget his work and enjoy the fun. Fredericks pressed harder, even as Haley tugged at his sleeve, begging him to play with her. He comforted her quickly with, "Just give me a minute, sweetheart," before turning back to the interrogation. Immediately, 3 SCP-1357-A entities appeared. They forcibly escorted Fredericks and his wife out of the park, while leading Haley deeper inside. One of them whispered to the little girl, "If you don't want to go home, you can stay here. They'll come for you only when you want to leave." The Foundation responded at once, deploying Mobile Task Force Delta 2 to rescue Haley. But SCP-1357 was no harmless playground. It was a trap. Hundreds of SCP-1357-A manifested, overwhelming the rescue team completely. Despite their superior training and equipment, the team failed. Haley never returned. The signal from the recording device attached to the teddy bear is still transmitted outside. The tapes revealed Haley being treated by the SCP-1357-A entities as a new family member. They played with her, gave her gifts, even read her fake letters from her parents. At first, Haley laughed, believing her parents were simply busy. But as days passed, longing and doubt began to creep in. One recording captured her asking, "Steve, do you think my mom and dad will ever stop loving me?" The entity replied, "If they don't, then we will. Forever." In a moment of weakness, Haley broke down crying, begging to go home. Instead of returning her, SCP-1357-A led her into a dark, hidden area of the park, whispering, "This is the way back home." The device recorded her terrified scream, then silence. When the tapes were reviewed, Fredericks lost control. In a fit of despair, he stormed into SCP-1357 alone, opening fire on the SCP-1357-A entities. His raid ended when a little girl identical to Haley appeared, threw her arms around him and said, "I told you I wasn't ready to come back yet." Before he could react, Fredericks was subdued. From that point on, Fredericks was banned from participating in any SCP-1357 testing. But the tragedy did not end there. Another time, When the Foundation attempted to contact SCP-1357 using the phone number printed on the ticket, someone picked up the call, and the voice on the other end was none other than Haley's. Hello, welcome to Playland, the perfect place for your family. How can I help you today? On the other end of the line, Frederick's screams echoed, "Give me back my daughter." But Haley's response was only, "Sorry, but your daughter still wants to stay with us. If you'd like to visit, we can give you 2 tickets. But it looks like she really loves it here, so please don't try to contact us again, okay?" The Miles family of Wet Money, Kansas had once been a picture of peace and happiness. Tim Miles, the husband, worked as an engineer at a large factory. His wife Eliza was a homemaker caring for their home, and their 17-year-old son, Tucker, was still in high school. Life seemed stable until a mass layoff took place, and Tim was among those dismissed. As the family's sole breadwinner, the burden of finances fell heavily upon him. Eliza tried to comfort and encourage him to apply for new jobs, but fate turned cruel. On the way to one such interview, Tim was involved in a serious car accident. Surgery saved his life, but left him with permanent injuries and drained what little savings the family had. Medical bills piled up, and the future grew bleak. The Miles household became a place of arguments and blame, while Tucker, only 17, tried to hold the family together, growing more powerless each day. One afternoon, Tucker had just come home from school when he heard his mother call out, asking him to get a roll of tape from the bathroom. He answered once, then stepped inside. The door closed behind him, and only a few seconds later, it could no longer be opened. Tucker turned the knob, pushed hard, then hit the wooden door with his hand. It didn't move. He called out loudly, "Mom, I'm stuck." Eliza quickly ran over, tried turning the handle, and both of them panicked when they realized the door seemed to be sealed shut. She told Tucker to stay calm and wait until his father came home. The boy tried to hold back his fear and asked, "Do you still need the tape, Mom?" But when he heard her reply, "No, I don't need it anymore," the uneasiness in Tucker's voice became clear. That night, when Tim came home, Eliza pulled him toward the bathroom door. Her hurried words made Tim frown. He tried the handle, then shoved against the door, but it held firm, as if made of solid stone. He thought about the repair bill, but Eliza's panic and Tucker's choking cries left him no choice. From the garage, he grabbed a crowbar. Metal screamed against wood, then the tool snapped in two. Eliza was stunned. Tim broke into a cold sweat. From inside, Tucker cried, "Am I going to be stuck in here until I die?" Tim tried to reassure him, saying they would call the fire department. But Eliza broke down. Reminding her husband that they had just filed for bankruptcy, how could they pay another fee? Even so, that night the firefighters arrived. They swung their axes at the door, but not a single mark appeared. Tucker panicked, screaming, "Not even an axe can break this door, Mum. What else can we do? Blow up the whole house? Why won't this cursed door open?" He sobbed uncontrollably, while Eliza clung to the fragile hope that somehow they could still save him. But in the end, the firefighters left, shaking their heads in defeat. In the days that followed, the family could only sit before the sealed bathroom door, speaking to Tucker through the cold wooden barrier. Eliza pushed thin MRE rations through the gap. Tucker forced to laugh, saying they tasted awful. Eliza forced herself to smile back, pretending they were still eating at the table together. In despair, Tucker kept mentioning a roll of duct tape. He tried to shove it through the gap, but it wouldn't fit. He hit it, shoved it. Nothing worked. That was when he broke down, screaming that there was nothing left he could do, that he had once been so happy, but now he would die trapped in a bathroom. "I just want to hug you one more time, Mom," Tucker choked out, as Eliza collapsed against the door, pressing her hand to the wood, weeping. Not long after, the Foundation was alerted to the existence of SCP-4831 and established containment. All outside witnesses to the anomaly were given amnestics, except the Miles family. The Miles home was completely sealed off and converted into SCP-4831's containment site. Eliza and Tim were permitted to remain, living alongside the room that had taken their son, listening to his voice through the door each day, and to the silence when he slept. But they knew the truth. Tucker, now SCP-4831-1, would never step out of that bathroom again.